She arrived in Chicago with the kind of electricity that franchises spend decades trying to manufacture. Angel Reese, the 6'3" force of nature out of LSU, was supposed to be the cornerstone of a Chicago Sky rebuild. A generational talent who would restore relevance to a franchise still basking in the glow of its 2021 championship, but struggling to find its footing ever since. For 2 seasons, she delivered on nearly every promise. Back-to-back all-star selections, record-breaking rebounding performances, and a magnetic star power that turned Wintrust Arena into must-see television. Then, on April 6, 2026, it was over. The Chicago Sky traded Angel Reese to the Atlanta Dream, and the WNBA world has not stopped arguing about it since. The question that lingers, loudly, furiously, and with every Atlanta box score that hits the news wires, is a simple one. Did the Chicago Sky just make the biggest mistake in franchise history? When the news broke, it did not arrive gently. It detonated. Fans flooded social media with outrage. A prominent podcast host called it franchise malpractice. Former NFL player and filmmaker Matthew Cherry, a Chicagoan, posted 2 words on the team's Instagram page: sell the team. One exasperated supporter summed up the collective grief of the Sky faithful with devastating brevity. We were only here for Angel. The terms of the deal were straightforward, if lopsided in the eyes of many. The Sky sent Reese, a 2-time All-Star, the face of the franchise, and one of the most recognizable athletes in women's basketball, to Atlanta in exchange for the Dream's first-round draft picks in 2027 and 2028, along with second-round pick swap rights in 2028. General Manager Jeff Pagliacca framed it as a move designed to achieve roster balance and called it a great opportunity for all parties. But for a fan base that had watched stars like Elena Del Don, Kalia Copper, and Candace Parker all depart in similarly disorienting fashions, the front office's measured language offered little comfort. The timing added salt to the wound. Chicago is scheduled to host the WNBA All-Star Game on July 25th at the United Center, the second time the city has been granted that honor. But with Reese gone, if she earns All-Star recognition in 2026, she will be representing another franchise when she walks into that arena. How we finna host the All-Star Game and we ain't got no All-Star? One fan asked pointedly on Instagram. It was a fair question with no satisfying answer. To be fair to the Sky's front office, the trade did not emerge from a vacuum. The relationship between Reese and the organization had visibly frayed during the 2025 season, a campaign that ended as the worst in franchise history. Chicago posted a combined 23-61 record across Reese's 2 seasons and failed to reach the playoffs in either year. The Sky had been constructed primarily around defensive talent, playing under an offensive-minded coach, and the results were predictably ugly. Late in the 2025 season, Reese went public with her frustrations, expressing pointed dissatisfaction with the roster and calling on the organization to surround her with better players. It was a bold stance for a third-year professional, and it offended some teammates while generating headlines that the franchise could have done without. She was subsequently suspended for half a game for making statements detrimental to the team. Though Reese told reporters in December that she planned to return to Chicago, the tension had clearly not dissipated. Reese herself later acknowledged as much, telling reporters after the trade that while she was grateful for her time with the Sky, she wanted more and wanted to be surrounded by people who could make her better. From the organization's perspective, there was also a structural logic to the move. By acquiring the Dream's 2027 and 2028 first-round picks, Chicago now holds 5 first-round selections across the next 3 draft cycles. The front office argued that this draft capital provides a platform for a more sustainable rebuild, one built on depth and flexibility rather than dependence on a single superstar. Shortly after the trade, the Sky made notable free agency moves, bringing in Dejanai Carrington, Rickea Jackson, Azura Stevens, Skylar Diggins, and J.C. Sheldon. The influx of talent surprised fans who couldn't help asking why these kinds of roster improvements couldn't have been made while Reese was still there. If the Chicago Sky hoped the debate would fade with time, Angel Reese has made sure it hasn't. She arrived in Atlanta with a point to prove, and through the first weeks of the 2026 season, her performance has been nothing short of spectacular. In just her second game as a Dream, Reese recorded 12 points and 16 rebounds against the Dallas Wings, securing her 51st career double-double in the process. At 24 years old, she became the second youngest player in WNBA history to reach 50 career double-doubles, with only the legendary Tina Charles achieving the milestone at a younger age. Her 8 offensive rebounds in that game outperformed the entire Dallas Wings roster. The numbers have not let up. Through the first weeks of the 2026 season, Reese is averaging 14.6 points and a league-best 11.9 rebounds per game, leading the WNBA in rebounding, a title she has now claimed in each of her 3 professional seasons. Against the Toronto Tempo, she delivered 15 points and 17 rebounds, including a career-high 11 offensive rebounds that fell just one shy of the WNBA single-game record. It was her 59th career double-double, the most by any player through the first 76 WNBA games in league history, placing her alongside NBA immortals like Blake Griffin in the annals of the sport's most prolific double-double performers. The Atlanta Dream, already a formidable team that transformed from a 15-win squad to a 30-win powerhouse in a single season under head coach Carl Smesko, have improved further with Reese in the fold. They entered mid-June with a 9-4 record, positioned among the WNBA's elite contenders. Alicia Gray is averaging 20.4 points per game. Ryan Howard is providing 24-point efforts with regularity, and Reese is giving Atlanta the physical interior presence it lacked. The Dream have the 3rd best defensive rating in the league, and their combination of perimeter shooting and interior dominance presents matchup nightmares for opponents. The most painful reminder of what Chicago gave away came on Reese's return to Wintrust Arena. She scored 17 points, pulled down 17 rebounds, dished out 4 assists, and recorded 2 steals in 35 minutes as Atlanta defeated the Sky 82-75. When the buzzer sounded, a fan ran onto the court holding a sign that read, "Don't worry, Chicago, Angel is still watching over us." The arena erupted in chants of, "Sell the team." It was, in every sense, a gut punch. The case for the Sky, a calculated gamble on the future. Not everyone is convinced Chicago made an error, though the voices defending the trade have had to work increasingly hard to make their case. The pro-trade argument rests on several pillars. First, the Sky and Reese were clearly not working as a partnership. The 2025 season's dysfunction, the public disagreements, the suspension, the missed playoffs, suggested that continuing the relationship was untenable regardless of her talent. Keeping a disgruntled star who publicly undermines organizational decisions is rarely a recipe for success. Second, the draft capital is genuinely significant. 5 first-round picks in 3 years gives Chicago tremendous flexibility. Those picks can be used to draft young talent, packaged together in blockbuster trades, or used to acquire veterans who might accelerate the rebuild. History offers examples, the San Antonio Spurs, the Oklahoma City Thunder, of franchises that accumulated draft equity after painful teardowns and emerged stronger for it. Third, the Sky have been aggressive in reshaping the roster around Camila Cardoso, Reese's former front court partner. Cardoso, who averaged 13.6 points and 8.5 rebounds per game in 2025 while shooting 52.8% from the field, is the player Chicago has clearly decided to build around. She is younger, cheaper, and the organization believes her development arc points upward. The wave of free agency additions surrounding her suggests this isn't simply a rebuild out of desperation. It looks, at least on paper, like an intentional reconstruction. The case against a pattern of self-destruction. The problem, critics argue, is that Chicago has been here before. Too many times. Elena Del Don, Sylvia Fowles, Kaylia Copper, Candace Parker, the Sky have a disquieting pattern of acquiring elite talent, failing to build winning systems around them, and then watching those stars depart, sometimes by trade, sometimes by choice. Each departure was accompanied by organizational explanations about roster balance or long-term vision, and each one left the franchise weaker and the fan base more cynical. What makes the Reese trade particularly stinging is the context of the draft picks. Atlanta is a playoff contender built to win now. Their 2027 and 2028 first-round picks, as CBS Sports noted in their trade grade analysis, will likely arrive in the late teens at best. Hardly the high lottery selections that can transform a franchise. The Sky didn't receive a package commensurate with the caliber of player they surrendered, and Chicago's own poor drafting history does little to inspire confidence that even good picks will be used wisely. Moreover, the argument that Reese wasn't a fit deserves scrutiny. It wasn't Reese's fault that the team was constructed primarily with defensive players to serve an offensive-minded coach. The front office built the roster poorly, and then, when the experiment failed, traded away the star rather than examining its own decision-making. Critics have also pointed out that Reese never formally requested a trade. She expressed frustration, loudly and perhaps imprudently, but she didn't demand to leave. The organization made that choice for her, and the optics of it align uncomfortably with a broader narrative about Chicago's inability to create an environment where superstars want to stay. What this means for both franchises. The diverging trajectories of the two teams through mid-June 2026 tell a clear story. Atlanta is a genuine championship contender. Reese is thriving in a system that suits her, surrounded by elite perimeter scorers who create the spacing she needs to dominate in the paint. Under Smesco's positional-less system, there are fitment questions. Reese is not a three-point threat, and Atlanta lives at the arc. But her physical dominance and defensive instincts have made her an essential piece of a machine that appears capable of making a deep playoff run. Chicago, by contrast, is in transition. Their new roster has promise, and there are reasons to believe this summer's rebuild could eventually bear fruit. But the Sky will not be making noise in the 2026 playoffs, and the absence of Angel Reese, whose return visit to Wintrust Arena drew more emotional intensity than most Chicago home games ever did, is a daily reminder of what was sent away. The verdict? There is an argument, a narrow, cautiously optimistic one, that Chicago will be vindicated years from now when those draft picks bloom into contributors and the new roster finds its identity. Front offices are paid to think in seasons, not highlights, and rebuilding properly is genuinely difficult in a league where roster construction is constrained by salary caps and limited rosters. But right now, in the cold light of June 2026, with Angel Reese dominating the WNBA's best team and Chicago fans chanting "Sell the team" in their own arena, it is very hard to argue that the Chicago Sky did not make a massive mistake. They had a 24-year-old franchise cornerstone, a two-time All-Star, a historic rebounder, a marketable megastar who electrified their fan base. And they let her go for 2 lottery tickets that may never cash out. Whether the franchise can recover from this decision depends entirely on whether their front office has finally learned from a pattern of errors that has defined Chicago Sky basketball for years. The court, for now, has rendered its verdict, and Angel Reese is flourishing in Atlanta while her former team rebuilds from scratch. Again,